I've always loved being outdoors. The quiet of the woods, the fresh air, the peaceful solitude. It's something I've done since I was a kid. Hiking, backpacking, and just enjoying nature have always been my way of clearing my head. But last summer, after a seemingly innocent hike, everything changed. And I've never looked at the woods the same way again. Let me tell you the story of the day I found a phone in the woods. And what was on it still haunts me. It was late July, a warm but breezy afternoon, when I decided to check out a trail I hadn't explored before. It wasn't part of the main tourist route, so I knew it would be quieter. Just a few hours of solitude, away from the distractions of daily life. I packed my essentials: water, snacks, my phone, and a small knife. Not that I thought I'd need it, I was just out for a simple hike, taking in the fresh air, clearing my head from the noise of the world. I made my way down the trail, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional bird call in the distance. It felt like the perfect escape. 2 hours into my hike, I stopped to rest by a fallen tree. It was a good spot, out of the sun but with a clear view of the trail ahead. That's when I noticed something odd. Something lying off the trail in the dirt. A phone. It was newer, still in good condition, with no visible scratches or mud. I figured someone must have lost it recently. I picked it up, wiped it off, and pressed the power button. The screen lit up immediately, and to my surprise, it didn't ask for a passcode. Now, I'm not the type to snoop, but the fact that it was unlocked struck me as strange. I thought about calling it in, but I decided to check the photos first, just in case there was something on there that could help identify the owner. The phone could be traced back to someone if I had more information. As I scrolled through the photos, the first few were normal. Nature shots, old cabins, and some trail markers. I thought, okay, this person must have just taken some random photos during their hike. But as I kept going, something started to feel off. The next few pictures were of people, but they weren't posed selfies or group shots. These were taken from behind. No faces, just backs. The kind of shots you'd get if you were following someone without them knowing. And then I saw it. A picture of a hiker, someone walking down a trail. But the strange part? They were wearing the same clothes as me. Same backpack. Same hat. And it wasn't from earlier in the hike. It was taken that very day. My heart dropped. I scrolled back, just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. And sure enough, there it was. Clear as day. A photo of me, walking down the same trail, in the same spot. The angle of the shot was from behind, like someone had been walking just a few steps behind me, without me noticing. I froze. I turned around, half expecting to see someone standing there in the woods behind me. But there was nothing. Just the trees, the distant sound of birds, and the breeze. But I felt it then. Something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I kept telling myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe the phone belonged to someone who had passed through here earlier, and the photos were just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. I opened the video gallery. The first few clips were nothing unusual, just shaky footage of someone walking through the woods. But then I found the last video, and my stomach sank. It was from the night before, taken while I was camping alone in a remote part of the forest. The camera was zooming in on my tent, and you could hear the person's breathing, slow and deliberate. Then, the video abruptly cut to black. By this point, I was absolutely terrified. My mind was racing, but I didn't know what to do. I shoved the phone in my backpack and began walking back to the trailhead as quickly as I could without running. Every noise in the woods felt louder than it should have. Every rustle in the trees made me look over my shoulder. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I locked the doors and immediately started driving home, trying to calm myself, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. It felt like I wasn't alone, even in my car. The next morning, I drove straight to the nearest police station and handed over the phone. I told them everything, how I found it, the photos, the videos, and the fact that someone had clearly been following me without my knowledge. They were polite, but I could tell they didn't take me seriously. They said they'd look into it, but I didn't hear back from them for weeks. The officers seemed to think it was just a prank, maybe some lost hiker trying to mess with me. I followed up a month later, and they said the phone had no traceable owner and that there was nothing they could do. They said it was probably just a mistake, a weird coincidence. But here's the thing. I still don't know who was following me, or why. And I'll never forget that feeling. The feeling that someone was out there, just waiting, watching. I still don't hike alone anymore. I never should have taken the trail. The locals warned me that it wasn't on any map for a reason, but I was just passing through, and it was supposed to be a shortcut back to my motel. The sun was already low when I stepped onto the path, a thin strip of dirt winding through towering trees. The air was damp, thick with the scent of wet leaves and moss. There was no wind, no rustling of branches, just my own footsteps, crunching against the earth. Then, after about 10 minutes, I heard another set of footsteps. I stopped. The sound stopped. I turned, scanning the trail behind me. Nothing. Just trees stretching into the dimming light. I told myself it was just the echo of my own steps, and kept walking. But the moment I did, the footsteps started again. Closer this time. I turned faster. Still nothing. The hair on my arms stood up. There was no wind, no animals, no sound at all, except for those goddamn footsteps. I picked up the pace. So did the footsteps. Panic started to set in. My breathing grew shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. I was being followed. And then, a voice, right behind me.
Don't turn around.
I froze. The voice was low, rasping, inches from my ear. My whole body went rigid. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. The voice spoke again.
If you turn around, you'll see him. And if you see him, he sees you.
A wave of cold washed over me, deeper than fear. Something primal. I tried to steady my breathing. Who are you? I whispered. The voice didn't answer. The footsteps began again, but this time they circled me. I clenched my fists, willing myself not to turn. Every instinct screamed at me to look. I could feel the presence behind me, taller than me, too close. I needed to get out of there. Now I forced myself to move, walking faster, nearly jogging. The footsteps followed, never hesitating. And then I saw it, an old wooden sign up ahead, weathered, covered in deep scratches. Just 2 words, carved into the wood. Don't look. The air grew thick, suffocating. My legs burned as I ran, the presence still at my back, matching my speed effortlessly. The trail twisted and turned, but I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. The motel was close, just a little further. Then, I saw headlights. I burst out of the tree line, stumbling onto the asphalt of the main road. A truck skidded to a stop inches from me. The driver, a middle-aged man with a weathered face, jumped out. "Are you all right?" I gasped for air, doubling over. Someone was... I turned to point back at the trail. It was gone. No opening, no path. Just a solid wall of trees, undisturbed, as if no one had walked through there in years. The driver gave me a concerned look. "You sure you're okay, son? Ain't no trail there." I couldn't speak. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what just happened. I checked my phone. No signal. The map showed nothing but dense forest behind me. The driver sighed. "Come on, let's get you out of here." I didn't argue. As we drove away, I stared out the window, heart still pounding. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe. But then I saw it. A figure standing just beyond the tree line. Tall. Still. Facing me. I'd been hiking these trails for years. The dense forest was practically my backyard, just a few miles from home, a place I'd always found peaceful and familiar. But that day, something felt off. It wasn't the usual quiet, serene hum of nature. It was heavier. The wind seemed to hold its breath, the trees standing unnervingly still. But I shrugged it off, convincing myself that I was overthinking it. The sun was beginning to dip behind the trees when I decided to take a different path, one less traveled. I had explored this trail many times, but something about it felt foreign today, as if it had changed since the last time I walked it. The air felt thick with humidity, and the usual chorus of birds and insects had fallen silent. My boots crunched on the dry leaves beneath me, the only sound in the stillness. As I walked deeper, the trees seemed to close in around me. I had learned to respect the forest, its quiet ability to swallow sound. But today, the weight of its silence felt suffocating. A chill crawled down my spine. I tried to shake off the unease, but my eyes kept darting to the shadows in the trees, the way they seemed to move even though there was no breeze. That's when I saw it. A figure. Or at least, that's what I thought it was at first. Just a glimpse, caught in the corner of my eye. It was a person, or maybe something pretending to be one, standing still at the edge of the trail. I couldn't make out any details. Just a dark silhouette against the fading light. I called out, but there was no response. I took a few cautious steps toward it, then stopped. Something wasn't right. The air grew colder. I looked around, but there was no sign of movement, no sound at all, as though the world itself was holding its breath, watching. I turned back and continued walking, heart hammering in my chest, but the sense of being watched didn't dissipate. I kept feeling eyes on me, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I told myself it was just my imagination, but as I glanced over my shoulder, I swore I saw the figure again, now closer, standing motionless, at the tree line. It wasn't just a person anymore. It was something else. Something wrong. I broke into a jog, adrenaline surging through my veins. My breath came faster, and my steps were erratic, as if the forest itself was pressing in on me. The ground beneath my feet seemed to shift, the shadows twisting in unnatural ways. And then, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Just the stillness of the forest. Yet I could feel the presence of something. Something that wasn't human, lurking in the shadows, waiting for me to make a mistake. I couldn't outrun it. Panic surged as I stumbled through the underbrush, the woods feeling like a labyrinth that was closing in on me. I had to get back to the main trail, back to where I knew I would be safe. But when I finally reached it, I stopped dead in my tracks. The path was different. There was no way I had walked this far. The trees were in different positions. The trail, which should have led me home, now seemed to vanish into the darkness, swallowed by the forest. That's when I saw it again. The figure. But this time, it wasn't alone. More shapes emerged from the trees, not human anymore. Shapes that were wrong, too long, too twisted. I could see their pale eyes gleaming, reflecting the last bit of daylight as they moved toward me. I froze, unable to move as they closed in. And then, everything went black. I woke up back at the edge of the forest, drenched in sweat and trembling. The sun was up and everything seemed normal again. Too normal, but something was wrong. I looked at my hands. They were covered in scratches, dirt embedded deep in my skin, as though I had been crawling through the underbrush. I felt my heart race as I stumbled to my feet and glanced around. The forest was silent, but there was a subtle unease hanging in the air, like a faint whisper that never fully faded. I didn't know if I had just imagined it, if I had fallen asleep in the woods and dreamt it all, but the one thing I knew for certain was this: the forest had changed, and whatever I had encountered there, whatever was watching me, wasn't done yet. I never went back. Not to that trail. Not to that part of the forest. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear it. The footsteps, the crunch of dry leaves. Something or someone still out there. And I can't shake the feeling that it's waiting, watching,